Alrighty, boys and girls, it's that time of the year again. It's time to preview these Decision Day games as we are now approaching the final regular season game of the 2023 MLS season. Now, this year, I'm going to do it a little bit different where I'm actually going to split these preview of the Decision Day game into two parts because knowing the fact that in Decision Day, you always have like two different types of kickoff with the Eastern Conference Decision Day game kicking off first, this time being 6 p.m. Eastern and 3 p.m. Pacific. And then, of course, the Western Conference Decision game kicking off at 9 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Pacific. I think it's only fair that I do it like that. So in this video, we'll look at the Eastern Conference Decision Day game. And you notice I'm wearing DC United because they're the only team that is not going to be playing on Decision Day. And knowing that they're already been eliminated, I decided to wear this jersey knowing that, you can't blame me for jinxing your team by wearing the jersey that I'm wearing in the preview when the team is not even playing on Decision Day and are already eliminated from playoff contention. But we start off with the first one, which is Charlotte versus Inter Miami. So it's round two in terms of this matchup. We saw this matchup on Wednesday, where Miami definitely did a huge favor to all those teams that are fighting for the playoff position in the Eastern Conference, getting a draw and really spoil Charlotte chance to not only not clinch the playoff position, but now find themselves not controlling their own destiny. But nevertheless, it's a 9-3 and 11 record that Charlotte has, whereas for Miami, they currently have a 9-7 and 17 record. And actually, I'm sorry, it's not 9-3 11. It's actually 9-13 and 11 because I just did the math there. That didn't make sense. The fact that if I say 9-3 11, then Charlotte, of course, only played 20 uh four games. They actually have or 23 games, that is. They've now played 33 games. But in terms of the all-time meeting, 2-1-1 is the all-time meeting. And for Miami, obviously they're already eliminated from playoffs. But for Charlotte, they still have something to play for. They're currently 12th. Right now, they're in that four-way tie in ninth position. But because of the fact that they got a draw in that last game, and because the tiebreaker doesn't favor them, yeah, they're currently sitting in a peculiar situation where not only they have to beat Miami on that final day of the season, but they also need to rely on help if they do want to make it to the playoffs. Now, in terms of relevancy rating, because I'm gonna do this in terms of all the games of how relevant is these decision day kind of playoff game, I'll give it a 3.5 out of 5 because of the playoff races involving Charlotte, but also this is the last opportunity for anyone that want to see Messi played this season in MLS, and also expect to be a sold out crowd at Bank of America Stadium because of this game, whether if Messi and his company is going to play or not. I mean, I'm pretty sure if you're a Charlotte fan, you're hoping that that's not going to be the case because there's no doubt that if Messi and his company is going to play in this game. Last time that happened, yeah, Charlotte lost 4-0 in that game. So yeah, we'll see whether they are going to play and that they're going to trying to be that spoiler in terms of saying that, well, if we can't make it to the playoffs, then Charlotte can't make the playoffs either in this game. Now, moving on, we got FC Cincinnati versus Atlanta United. So Cincinnati pretty much doesn't really have anything to play for. That's been kind of the case for the last couple of weeks with a 28-5 record. They already clinched the Supporters Shield, and I actually forgot to put that there. So let me just put that already clinch the playoffs and the Supporter Shield standings. Well, for Atlanta, 13, 11, and 9. And in terms of the all-time meeting, 5, 4, and 2 in favor of Atlanta. And for Atlanta, they're currently 6th. They could climb as high as 5th and drop as low as 7. And I'm going to give a relevancy rating of 2 out of 5. I mean, yeah, it's not really kind of a relevant game. I mean, for Atlanta, they can't really clinch home field advantage in the first round. It's all about who, of course, they will face. But as we'll talk about with all these teams that are probably going to finish in fifth, sixth, or seventh place and not have home field advantage. I'm pretty sure all these teams, if there is one team that they hope that they can face, and if this certain team is going to get home field advantage, and that of course is the New England Revolution, because if the Revs does get home field advantage, I'm pretty sure a lot of these teams that doesn't get home field advantage want to play the Revs because the Revs have not done very well in the last month or so, and a lot of people have already kind of counted them out, even though if they're going to make it to the playoffs. But yeah, we'll see how this matchup is going to be. I mean, this could be maybe a preparation for Gonzalo Pineda of what they'll see in the playoffs, and maybe a good early test because I know Cincinnati is probably going to rest their guys. I don't think Pat Nolan is going to play his best roster. But still, Atlanta is going to eventually have to face against these top tier team like FC Cincinnati, and maybe even meet them in the playoffs. So this could be a good test to see how they will do when they do get into the playoffs. Now, moving on, we got Columbus versus Montreal. So Columbus 15-9-9, while Montreal 12-5-16. All-time meeting 13-5-10 in favor of Columbus. Now, for Columbus, they're currently in fourth place, and they can climb as high as third place, but they can also drop to fifth place and not have home field advantage in the first round. And knowing this season, Columbus has been really good at lower.com field, it's very important for them to have home field advantage. While for Montreal, they are one of those teams that are fighting for a playoff position. Although they, along with the Red Bulls, have control of their playoff destiny, they just need to win, and they will make it to the playoff position. They're 1 point above the red line right now. And in terms of the relevancy rating, it's got to be 4 out of 5. And the thing that is very relevant is not just the fact that Columbus is trying to get home field advantage in the first round, and Montreal is trying to win so they can make it to the playoffs, but it's the Wilfred Nancy derby. I mean, this is a game that I'm pretty sure Wilfred Nancy, as much as I know Montreal fans still like Wilfred Nancy, and that I'm pretty sure Wilfred Nancy still like those Montreal fans in reverse. You can't say that about the front office and Wilfred Nancy relationship. I mean, that relationship has been pretty tainted. It's been bridges that has been burned because of what happened last year, and now Wilfred Nancy has his chance to get revenge in this one. I mean, he won nothing more than not only to clinch a home field advantage for the crew this season, but to eliminate his old team and his old employee in the playoffs. And knowing the fact that Montreal has not been very good this season on the road, and Columbus is very good at home this year, yeah, it seems like this is not going to be in favor of Montreal coming into this. But that being said, on decision day game, it can anything can happen, and we'll see who, of course, will get the win, and whether or not if Wilfred Nancy is going to have his revenge in this game against his former team. Moving on, we got NYCFC versus the Chicago Fire. So this is kind of a game similar to the Minnesota versus Sporting KC game, where it's two teams that's currently below the red line playing against each other. And even though a win doesn't guarantee that both of the either of these teams is gonna make it to the playoffs, a loss pretty much will eliminate uh one of these teams. Now coming into this game, all-time meeting 10-6-3 in favor of NYCFC. NYCFC with an 8-14-11 record, while Chicago is 10-10-13. Now, for NYCFC, they absolutely need to win this game, and they also kind of need to rely on a bit of a miracle because they're currently 13. They're literally on the tail end in terms of trying to make it to the playoffs in terms of that five-team battle for the Eastern Conference playoff race, and they're 2 points below the red line. Whereas for Chicago, they're currently 11th in the standings. They're in that four-way tie for ninth place, but they don't control their own destinies. And in terms of the relevancy rating, it's got to be 5 out of 5. I mean, because of the fact that this is between two teams that are fighting for playoffs, facing off against each other. And even though I know the win doesn't guarantee them to move on to the playoffs, both of these teams will just want to play so that they can win, because again, a loss will eliminate either of these teams. And I would say that whoever loses this game, it will be just a very disappointing season. I mean, for NYCFC, a year where I know they're kind of go through a bit of a retool, but it'll still be disappointing if they don't make it to the playoffs. Consider they had a bit of a late push. And then the Chicago Fire, I mean, I don't really need to say too much about that. It feels like narrative continues with the Chicago Fire team, where it feels like it's every single season they go through this cycle. And usually, if they do follow that narrative and cycle, they're probably not going to win this game. They're going to miss out on the playoffs on the final day. Similar to what happened a couple years where this was also a matchup on decision day where Chicago had to win if they want to make it to the playoffs, and they didn't. Now, moving on, we got Nashville versus the New York Red Bulls. Speaking of a matchup that happened a couple of years ago on Decision Day, this was another matchup that we saw a couple years ago where the Red Bulls had to get a result to make it to the playoffs, and they did. So they're looking to try to repeat again in this one against the Nashville team is 13-10-10, while the Red Bulls is 10-10-13. In terms of the all-time meeting, 1-2-0 in favor of the Red Bulls, and for the Nashville, they're currently 7th in the standings, and they're kind of almost in the same situation as Atlanta. They can't really get home field advantage. They can still climb as high as fifth place, but they can all, if they do lose this game, no matter what, they'll finish seventh in the standings. While for the Red Bulls, again, they're currently in that four-way tie for ninth place, but they do control their own destiny. Currently in 10th place in the standings. So yeah, obviously they're looking to try trying to get a win in this one, just like last time. Well, last time they got a draw, but this time if they can get a result like they did last time on decision day when both of these teams meet each other on the final day of the season, they keep their record in terms of the longest active playoff streak in MLS. Now, in terms of relevancy rating, I'll give it a 3 out of 5, mainly because the Red Bulls have more to play for in this game, and you wonder whether Gary Smith maybe rest some of his guys in this one because they really don't have too much to play for besides maybe climb a little bit higher in the standings and hope that they maybe get New England as one of that team that they will face in the playoffs. But for the Red Bulls, there's still a lot to play for, and the fact that they're in a very good position right now, which is something that I didn't think that was going to be the case a couple of weeks ago. We'll see whether or not if they can make this count. Speaking of New England, they're going to be playing against the Philadelphia Union. So New England 14-10-9, while the Union is 15-10-8. Now this is a matchup that has a bit of a relevancy in terms of who gets home field advantage because both of these teams. Well, the Union is currently third, and the Revs is fifth place. And depending on the Columbus resort, if the Revs does win in this one and the Union loses, there could be a case where the Revs could climb themselves into that fourth position and will have home field advantage. But in terms of the all-time meeting, though, yeah, a win is going to be tough for the Revs to do because they don't really play the Union very well. The Union has had better of this series. 21-9-9 is the all-time record. But for the Revs, again, they're currently fifth in the standings. They can still climb as high as third place, but they can drop as low as seventh place in the standings. While for the Union, they're currently third in the standings. They do win this game, they still remain in third. They can't really catch second place Orlando City on the final day, but they can still drop as low as fifth place, and they could lose that home field advantage in the first round. So yeah, this is a game that I would say the relevancy rating is 2.5 out of 5. I mean, even with a win in this one, if Columbus does get a result against Montreal, depending on how the tiebreaker is. I think the Union does have the win tiebreaker, though if the Revs does win, then the tiebreaker goes to goal differential, and depending on how many goals that the Revs can beat the Union probably would still be above the Revs in terms of the standings. So yeah, I think that's kind of knocked a little bit of the relevancy rating a little bit, but also the fact that the Revs they are a team that just limping into the playoffs, and that out of all the teams that you can say could be one and done, the Revs is probably right at the top of the list because of the free fall that they've been going through and the amount of injuries that they've been going through this season. Then we move on into the last game, which is Toronto versus Orlando City. And it's a good thing this is the last game I'm going to mention because I think if you want to talk about the most irrelevant game in terms of Decision Day 2023, because every Decision Day there's always an irrelevant game where it really means absolutely nothing in terms of whoever wins or lose, it's this game because TFC they already clinched the wooden spoon with the worst record of 14-10-9, or actually not 14-10-9. 4-10-19. I gave Toronto an extra 10 wins, thinking that they're still in playoff position. But for Orlando, 17-9-7 in terms of the all-time meeting, 8-3-7 in favor of Toronto. And again, Orlando, no matter what happens, they'll finish second in the things, and because of that, again, relevancy, it's 1 out of 5. I mean, it's a pretty irrelevant kind a game. I mean, if you like to watch MLS game, no matter how the circumstances, maybe this is a game for you to watch. But otherwise, I don't think anybody is gonna really watch this game. I mean, I'm pretty sure TFC fans will still attend this game, maybe see some of their what was supposed to be a core that should work out, but it turns out to be absolute disaster. I'll play one last time because something tells me this offseason, John Herman is going to absolutely drop a nuke in this roster, and this will be a really different Toronto team that we'll see heading into next season. But there you have it. That is pretty much it in terms of the preview for all of the Eastern Conference Decision Day game. Let me know in the comments below what do you think of this video, and as always, let me know in the comments below your prediction in terms of these Decision Day game in the Eastern Conference. But yeah, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys leave a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.